All right, we're live now. Welcome, everybody. Tony Cutillo, PhillyInfluencers.com, Fox Sports The Gambler, Heat Ratio Sports, joined by Matt MacCoy, FantasyTeamAdvice.com. Matt, I got that right, correct?
Yes, sir, you do. Thank you for including me on this evening.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining me. I had a couple people reach out, couldn't get on, not lack of mobile equipment right now, but I just been doing a little segment every single day, along with all my other podcasts and other shows, and I just was sitting around tonight and I'm watching the NBA and I'm being postponed and I'm watching WNBA come out with a pretty powerful statement, and I just I seen some stuff on Twitter. I see some stuff on Facebook, and I know we don't always look to take that as the truth of the day, but it just made me realize in what an upside down America we live in right now. And this is just me being me. I was, I wanted to open up, a forum to anybody who wants to comment. Listen, there's no judgments here. There's really not. There's no judgments. It is just all opinions. You say what you want, say what you feel. We've all been brought up a certain way. And we've all seen things throughout our lifetime. I'm a 42-year-old male. I've seen things that I don't agree with. I was brought up not to see color. I'd never seen color. People are people, in my opinion. And when I see things that happen like this, I feel very strongly about it. And I don't understand. I ask why when my children say, Dad, why did that happen? I have to sit them down and talk to them and explain to him, how screwed up there are, individuals. And I'm not going to get into this long talk about law enforcement and things of that nature. What I want to say is, I was highly impressed by what the NBA did tonight. I did not, and this was all spearheaded by the Bucks, right? They were the first one, and I was actually, one of my co-hosts and Mike Batarak, he said, I don't think I had the balls to do it, but I completely agree with it, and he was right, and I was shocked that it was able to happen, and it was a domino effect, which I think needed to happen. The one thing I'm going to ask you, Matt, because you're live on with me right now, is, and I don't understand this question, but why does it take the players? Why don't the owners, why don't the commissioners, why wouldn't they step in? Why does it take the players to protest? Why don't you see, listen, David Silver has been amazing up to this point with getting the NBA in this bubble and be able to play, but why wouldn't he come forth and say, what, no games tonight? We're going to stand in solidarity. We're going to stand united. We're going to stay on this front. Well, why did it take the players? That's the only question I have. And I think that's one of the biggest issues right now with the players. And that this season, listen, this season is in peril right now. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think it's a strong statement. I think it's something that needs to be made. I just think it should have came from higher than the players, and the players shouldn't have had to do it themselves. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you are 100% on point there. I think the answer to your question is the same reason why are we playing NBA games in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah.
And that answer is money. Money is the root of all
Oof.
evil, a wise man once said, and I think that's what you're seeing play out. Owners of franchises and leaders they're not going to stand up and say, "Well, just because this is wrong, we're going to put our money at risk." They're not going to. They're in this game to make money, and quite frankly, they're willing to put other people's lives at danger to fill their pockets, and that's unfortunate. And then I think we say play out, and I'm a big supporter of the players. The players now in 2020 have a platform larger than any in sports history, in my opinion.
Yep.
And I think it's very encouraging to see these players who are leaders in their own industry step up and say, enough is enough. And we're tired of this, and we're going to take a stand. And let's see what NBA owners and the NBA commissioners are going to do when we put their playoffs at risk. And I think we're seeing it play out that way.
Yeah, you touched on a great point. I've been saying this for a long time, and this goes against to what a lot of people say. And I know a lot of people are saying that, you hear the statements, right? We're turned off by the product. It's a political statement. It's, we're here to watch basketball, not hear a movement. But see, they look at it ass backwards because of exactly what you just said. This is a global platform. The NBA is a global platform. They built this into a global platform. So if there's any platform in the world to, produce change and to advocate a different America, this is where it needs to happen. It really does. So that ridiculous statement about we don't want to, no, this is what they do, right? And they're using the platform to their advantage, and they should. This is the way you get heard. This is the way when things stop. You said, listen, you said it right away, Matt. It's all about money, and in the end, right? So when you get hit in the pocket, you get hit in the wallet. What happens? Things change. It's just the way it works. And unfortunately, that is the way America works. And it sucks. It really does. And it has to come to that point. And I hope that, again, this shows that there's more to life than sports. And, you mentioned it earlier about the pandemic, right? We're playing during a pandemic. We did everything we could. And I still say that's why the NBA did it the right way in the beginning. And so did the NHL, and the other two leagues, I think, did it the wrong way, only because, they didn't make the money as the focal point. They made safety as the main protocol. And I think right now that's what needs to happen. Obviously the safety is taken care of, but now we have a new narrative. Now we have, and I don't want to bring up, we all know what we're talking about here. We all know what's going on. And we need to have some kind of change. I'm being honest with you, and people, whether they want to believe it or not, I am actually shocked that there is so much racism that still exists in America. And I am. I can't. And maybe it's because I was blindsided by it. Maybe because I was brought up to not see color. Maybe it was because I was brought up, and Matt, you're probably around the same age. We didn't have the technological advances that we have nowadays, right? We weren't able to go on a Facebook or a Twitter and see what people's comments are. The only time we heard them is if they were said to us in person, or they had or they were on Action News with a microphone in front of their face. So now we're seeing, a uniqueness and a realness about everybody. And unfortunately, when you hear that statement of you show your true colors, that is true, because I'm absolutely appalled by some of the comments I see on somebody's Facebook posts and these Twitter posts. I can't believe it exists. I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's just because I am who I am, but I am absolutely shocked that we are dealing with this in the year 2020.
Well, I think that as a society, we've we've come a long way, while at the same time we have a long way to go, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
And I still
yeah.
feel like you and I, you can only talk about how you were raised and your experiences growing up as a young person, and that's how I feel as well. But eh, you know, I'm a white man, and I was raised in white America, and I was raised differently than somebody who's African American and their experiences. So I, to see people who are African American come out and make this stand, and not only that, now to see people of all races, people of all gender and equality coming out and supporting this movement and just saying, listen, society has to change. It has to change. We have to continue to do things differently, because what's happening out there is just a travesty, and people are being gunned down, and it's senseless, and yeah, it leaves you for a lack of words, which I guess at the moment I have right now. But it's senseless violence, and it's just unbelievable to see.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the lack of words is a good way to put it, because it was hard. I mean, we talked, and prior to going on air, and you're editing some podcasts that you had to do, and I was doing the same thing tonight, and I wasn't even in the mood to talk sports. I wasn't even in the mood to promote the podcast. I had Karita Parks on. She covers the Washington football team with me a couple days ago, and I messaged her. I just said, listen, I published a pod, and I'm not ready to promote it right now. I'm not in the mood, and this is what happened to me. When the pandemic happened, I wasn't in the mood to watch multi-millionaire players get $300 million contracts. Why there's 400,000 Americans who are scrapping the pile trying to make a plug nickel because they don't have a job, and it's hard for me to get excited over guys that are multi-millionaires, and this is the same thing. It's hard for me to talk sports right now, and I know it's because it's in the moment, but it's just I'm so passionate about it because I didn't live it, and I'm so passionate about it because I didn't feel it existed the way it did, and that's not being ignorant. That's just me because of the way, like you said, Matt, we're all brought up differently, and and I wasn't brought up that way. I treated everybody the same, and now that I feel like people, and whether it be my own ethnicity and my own background who treat people differently, it makes me sick, it makes me disgusted. It really does, because I don't see it that way. I really don't. And we really, listen, our future, my kids are already screwed when it comes to political gain, and comes from a monetary statute, because whether you want to talk, all these laws and all this money that's being given, it's just taken away from what is going to be left for them, so they're already screwed. So right now, let's get this shit right. Let's get America right so they can actually live a good life in a world that we've foreseen as being equal for everybody. And we won't have to do this, but unfortunately, Matt, I don't think that's ever going to happen, because everybody listen, they have their own opinions, and I'm not going to begrudge anybody, but some of these opinions are really outlandish, and they're really hurting the world that we so love, that is so divided right now, and we need to bring it back together. We really do.
Yeah, and again, we can only speak from personal experience, and
Yep.
I'll share this with you. This is one of the first times as a father where I've been truly conflicted, and I'll share this with you. My wife and I were very blessed to have several children. We've
Yep.
adopted several children, some of which are of African American descent. So, being a Caucasian male trying to raise some children who have African American heritage, I've never questioned it. I never loved the children any differently based upon race. They're my son, they're my daughter. But what's happened in 2020 is the first time I've really questioned my own parenting. What am I supposed to do? How, as a white man in America, am I supposed to raise African American children when this is happening? For me, my job as a father is to make sure our children are safe and healthy. And I emphasize the safe aspect of it, to the point that I think, and our children are very young, but I started thinking in my mind, what happens if one of my children gets pulled over? What's my advice to my child? What am I going to say? And again, I'm basing this parenting off of my experience as a white
Yep.
man. So this is the first time where I've really been conflicted. It truly is a parenting juxtaposition, as far as what do I do? And really, what I've done on my end, if I have reached out and I've sought advice of friends of mine who are African American, and said, what was your experience? What have your experiences been like growing up in this area as an African American? Help educate me, help work with me on these things, because that is how I can benefit and parent our children. Because again, if I raise our children the way that I was raised, then I don't know if I'm doing them a disservice at the end of the day.
That's a great point, man. It's a great point, and it brings up the question. You hit on so many different great topics for being so personable. Because again, if you don't know, ask questions, and I think that's, people are so quick to speculate and so quick to comment like they know exactly what the hell's going on. You don't educate yourself. think before you talk. And so many people do that. They just talk before they think. They talk before they educate themselves. And if you're unsure, ask somebody, figure it out, find out what it is. Don't just automatically assume. Don't just automatically throw things against the wall and hope they stick. Don't automatically just throw things away and say, you know what, I'm tired of this, I don't want to hear it. Why don't you actually try to figure out what's going on and understand? And I get it. There's a whole world of history out there that me, you, and everybody else don't even know about if we don't want to know. And that means we have the opportunities to educate ourselves if we so want to. And if we don't, then we don't. But it don't say that you don't have that opportunity, because it does exist. When me and you grew up, Matt, listen, we want to look something up. We had to go to the library. We had to get an encyclopedia. We had to look through newspaper clippings. We had to rent books out from the library. Right now, we can have the information in minutes. In minutes, we are so blessed and to have that opportunity. So instead of, tell your kids, and I'm not trying to tell you how to parent, but, and this isn't to you, Matt, this is just to the general public. It's like, get your kids together, and instead of, spending 12 hours on YouTube, take an hour out. I tell my kids all the time, what do you learn today? Listen, you can use YouTube as a very good informational source. Figure something out. Find out how they build a car. Find out, what happened back in, 1935. Find out who Harriet Tubman was. Find out who Abraham Lincoln was. Just names and historic events. We don't do that enough. We really don't. And then what we do, unfortunately, and I shouldn't say we, I think it's our children, and I think it's the millennial generation. We rely on what other people say, and we treat it as gospel. And that is one of the biggest issues to me. Stop acting like everybody else knows. Figure it out on your own. Listen, there's a big thing. You can validate whatever anybody's thinking, because you never know if it's right or wrong. Verify, validate it. You have the tools to do that. So I think that's huge. And I think the next step for the NBA and sports, let's see what's going on. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Because listen, the NFL needs to be watching this. Major League Baseball needs to be watching this. I mean, listen, I don't care what anybody says. That was what happened tonight, was a powerful message. And I was one, you can go back and you can watch the footage when we were doing PI Live, and people understand. People that follow me on PhillyInfluence.com in the very beginning knew my stance when it comes to Colin Kaepernick. I brought it up. I was a big advocate, not of every single thing, but I got it. I understood it. I understood what it was all about. Because you know why? I actually took it and I dissected it and I read about it because I wanted to know. Because like you said, Matt, we can only go by personal experiences, and I never had those experiences. So I went back and I actually tried to relive them through somebody else's vision by watching, by reading what was actually written on paper by highly credentialed people. So that's what I do. And I'm just, listen, I'm not telling everybody what to do, but I think that's something we needed to do more of. But Matt, let me ask you this while you're there. This is kind of a little sports centric in a sense that, do you feel that tomorrow the NBA picks right back up, or do you feel that we could be looking at, this has a lockout feel to me. It really does. And, there's still meetings going on as we are doing this show right now about what may happen. So what is your gut feeling about what tomorrow may bring?
I think you'll see a domino effect in the short term. I think you'll see more games be postponed tomorrow, Friday, perhaps into the weekend. I do feel like you'll see that fallout. Ultimately, I do think they'll come back onto the court or the field or whatever the sport might be. I do feel like they're going to rally around one another. Ideally, again, you hope that the leaders, your commissioner of these leagues, are listening to their players. And you keep mentioning that is don't rush out to speak just to be spoken or to be heard. listen to what your players are saying. And I will say, in the past, whether it be Stern or the new NBA GM, the names escape me at the moment, but they have listened to their players and they've been receptive. It's one of the leagues where it feels like there is a connection with the players and the leadership. Now, to your initial point, should the leadership have gone out there immediately, and should they have been the ones to go out there and make this decision? And I would agree with you on that, but what's done is done. That didn't happen. The players wouldn't want to make the move. The move has been made. Now for me, if you're a league that's unified, now's the time to support your players. You see what they're doing. They're trying to make a societal change. You should support that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, these guys are basketball players. This is what they do for a living. And me and you, we do our certain jobs for a living. And eventually, we got to pay the bills like anybody else. So I think eventually we're going to go back to work. When that looks like or what that looks like, I can't say. But again, I don't, I could be wrong on this, Tony. I don't think this is going to be a season ender. I think this is going to be a season delayer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. I think I think this is gonna run its course though, and I don't think I agree with you where I don't think tomorrow we're gonna come back and just say, oh, game fives are rescheduled and we're ready to roll. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think it's very important for everybody to be unified within you know every sports association right now, and that's including the MLS, the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, because I understand that they're their own prospective leagues, but they're a professional athlete. That's what they do, and they should be all one group. And I'm not saying that they have to do exactly the same thing, but what I'm saying is this is a time where everyone needs support in order to try to make change, which is what everybody is trying to do. And I think if they are unified on that front, I think it speaks volumes, and it obviously helps because let's face it. You mentioned earlier about everything being about money, which are absolutely correct. And you still have a sports betting aspect, right? So unfortunately, if the NBA stops and you are a sports bettor and you are not an actual fan, you are just a sports bettor, what are you going to say? Well, what leagues play tonight? I'm just going to bet on that. So that's why everything needs to be unified. That's why everything needs to come together. So everything stops. Everything stops. And once everything stops, then we can actually rebrand and we can reset, right? And what's up, Andrew? How you doing, buddy? And that's when we can get to the point of how are we going to move forward in this upside down America, is what I like to call it right now. And I'm not going to get political, and I'm not anything like that. It's just, in my opinion, we all are in an upside down world. I mean, listen, this is year 2020 has been one for the ages, man. It's not done. And God bless everybody that's in the hurricane's path, that's ready to hit tonight early morning, where we're talking about maybe a category 5. There's going to be inhabitable states or cities that are going to be just washed away. People are going to lose their livelihood. This is not a time for you to look the other way, right? Really not. I mean, it's just not a time to do that. So yeah, listen, man, let's cross over a little bit while I have you, Matt. Maybe 10 more minutes, and we get into some sports a little bit here. Again, we're welcoming all comments. Anything you want to talk about, if you want to talk about life, you want to talk about sports, whatever you want to talk about. We wanted to get this session out. We wanted people care about people. I like that. That's a good statement by Andrew. He's absolutely right. People care about people, and that's what we need to do, right? People. We don't justify anybody more than the other. People are people, and right now, that's where we're at. And we have an NBA season that's paused. We have, we have Stay safe and prayers to all in danger. Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about historical proportions of this hurricane. NHL, the Flyers, being from Philly, they pull one out. 4-3. They let the Islanders back in. We got a lot of stuff going. We had a no hitter last night, Major League Baseball. We still don't know what's going on in football, man. Listen, Matt, that's the bread and butter, right? You're doing fantasy podcasts. I'm doing fantasy podcasts. We're trying to, what's going to happen? Is there going to be an NFL movement? And is the season going to start on time? And if it starts on, I mean, listen, Matt, we're like 16 days away from kickoff, right? Isn't that crazy? It doesn't even feel like it, does it?
Well, man, time has stopped in 2020. It really has. At some points this year, the day didn't matter, the time didn't matter. We were doing all we could to get by, man. It's been such a whirlwind, and I appreciate your guy Andrew with the commentary there. People caring for people. I guess what you got me thinking as we're talking about it in the NFL potentially starting up here shortly is I just wonder, God forbid, if something were to happen to an actual NFL player, a big name player, whether it be the coronavirus or in this situation, an NBA player, hypothetically speaking, if an NBA player was somebody who was on the wrong end of the confrontation with the police officer, what would the reaction be around these leagues? So, I just wonder, you say we're all supposed to look at people the same, and I agree with that. Again, I just wonder if these leagues are doing so. I just wonder if it had been one of their own from their own brand, had been injured in a gunfight, or with coronavirus being the issue, it's going to be on the horizon. If somebody, a big name player, catches COVID and is in dire straits, what's the NFL going to do? So I think again, it's we are in troubling times, my friend, and I don't think any of us have the answers. But again, for me, in these times, sports can be an outlet, an enjoyable outlet to COVID, as real as that can be. We're still marching on. We're still looking for some actual action coming up in 2 weeks. It's going to be a season like we've never seen before. But I'm excited for it, man. It's going to be a lot of storylines, a lot of new players and new places. Um, but yeah, man, tonight's an odd night to really get fired up. But yeah,
Yep.
I will admit that I'm a little underwhelmed at the moment. But normally I'm jazzed up for the NFL season, and I think we have a bright future ahead of us, man. We just got to get through this year, man. It's been a rough
Yeah,
one.
you're right. Well said. Andrew's second in saying it's sad that money is more important in these leagues than human lives. And yeah, you're right, Andrew. We touched on that a little while ago. 100%. We completely agree. We really feel strongly about it. And Matt, you mentioned about what if, and it's such a great point. If you just listen, and I don't know if you've had a chance or if anybody listens had a chance, read Kyle Korver's piece in the Player Tribune. Read what he wrote. Listen to Doc Rivers. Listen to Chris Webber. Listen to Chris Paul. The thing is, these aren't people that are just speaking. These are people that are living what they're speaking, and you can see it, you can feel it. And if you're see, that's the thing, I get easily moved by certain statements and certain interviews. And when I watched Doc Rivers last night, I was moved. I really was. And you could feel it. You could see it in his, like, when is it going to stop? And that's somebody who feels like they've been run over multiple times and has been trying to feel, he said it right. Like you want to think that this doesn't exist. And I opened up about that. Like, I'm so immune to this because I'm shocked that it does exist. And here's a guy who's saying that and he's living it at the same time because he has seen it and he knows about it, and he's fighting back, hoping that it's not real, but it is. And they're the kind of things that are important. They're the kind of things that make this so important. And it's crazy. And you're right, Matt. It's really hard, you know, that to get fired up right now. It's tough. I mean, you know, until, and that's why I think the game being postponed was so huge, because until that Bucks game got postponed, before it was forfeited, I was all fired up. I was ready tonight. We were going to do a fantasy firebox podcast, and I couldn't do it, man. I just, I kept reading, and I kept seeing, and I'm like, I'm just not. I'm not in that zone right now. We'll see what happens when I wake up tomorrow, and we'll see what it is then. But for right now, you're right, man. It's hard. It's a really weird time. It's hard to get fired up. Andrew, you're right. You can't be that cold not to care about. And
Yeah.
Andrew, you're saying all the right words. People, human, right? That's what we're talking. This is the way people need to be treated. Stop treating people a different way, man. That this is what, and it, if you're, here's what I will say, and I'll say this: we're at 30 minutes. I want to go a couple more minutes. I wanted this to be an open forum, which was great, and I thank Matt again for joining me and sharing his emotional message. And what I will say is, if you can't see what's wrong right now, then right now there's something wrong with you. And I hate to say that, but I really feel that way. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying you have to feel as strongly about something that your extent of what's wrong may be different than mine. But if you can actually say that there is nothing, absolutely nothing wrong in America right now, then you are part of the problem and not the solution. Just my opinion, and that's just the way I feel.
Well, I'll say this, Tony. I don't think it's just you and I that feel a bit out of sorts. I mean, you look at it's just a weird year. I mean, I'm a huge baseball fan, but starting the season in June just has never felt right with me. It's just been off, and I'm a big basketball fan. We're playing basketball in August, and that doesn't feel right to me. So I'm hoping the NFL season brings a sense of normalcy where we have games on Sunday, we get back into our routine. But again, you're a fantasy guy. I'm a fantasy
Yep.
guy. I'm sure you've noticed. Look at how many people are playing out there, and the numbers are way down. That is a trend society wide where I think a lot of people, not just you and I, but across the board, a lot of people feel out of whack given everything that we've all gone through the last few months. And again, I think if we can get back to some sort of normalcy, whenever that will be, I think we all welcome that.
No, I completely agree, man. I completely agree. And going forward, man, Matt, I hope that we could have a very energetic conversation about fantasy football and sports betting, and we can get into it. We could bring the heat and bring the fire, like I know we both can. But for right now, I felt like this was a great way to just kind of I listen. I'm going to be honest. I needed to talk, man. I need
Yeah.
to talk, and I want the vent. I haven't, and I don't hold things in. Everybody knows that I got the name Jigsaw for a reason, but in all seriousness, I really wanted to just tell everybody how I feel, and I am a human being, and I have emotions, and they're running wild right now. They still are, and they will for the rest of the night, and they probably will again tomorrow. And and I will have to put them in check when I have to in order to do the job that I'm paid to do. But at the same time, I think it was a very important night to just hit the brakes a little bit, put everything in perspective, and get listen. People may watch this tomorrow. People may watch this on replay 2 days from now. Who knows? For the people that did watch, the people that checked in, like Andrew, I appreciate you, buddy. People like Matt who joined me, I appreciate the hell out of work Matt does. Matt grinds. Listen, one thing I will say, and I keep saying this, I'm going to say it again. I started a new segment on the Heat Ratio called Talking Sports on THR, and basically I like to talk to people, give them a one-on-one, and it's people like me, it's people like Matt, who I don't think get the notoriety. I'm not commanding it, but what I'm saying is there are so many people like me and Matt that you don't even realize, you don't even give a chance, and I don't think you realize how hard we work putting the time and energy into our craft to be able to give the people the content that they seek and they deserve. So I think there's a lot to say about that, Matt, and I don't think enough people mention it. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just speak for myself. This is, if you count this as a podcast, this is my sixth one today. We really grinded it out
See?
over the last few days and weeks, and but it's been such an enjoyable experience. I think it's been cathartic on some level to speak to other people in the fantasy community. I think we've all helped one another get through this. Again, such weird times, so it's an opportunity for us to get away and talk about things that we enjoy. You and I have had a podcast together, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I really enjoy breaking down tape with you and talking sports and all that. What I will say, and I'll chime into what you were saying earlier, sometimes the conversations that are the ones you least want to have and might be the most awkward are the ones you most have to have.
Yes.
So for me, we can chop it up and talk Philly sports all day, every day. I will enjoy that to the cows come home. But this conversation we're having tonight might be the most important conversation we ever have. So I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to speak and to be a part of the night, because I think people need other people to listen to and talk to and feel like they're being heard. And you're providing people that opportunity. So God bless you.
Nah, thanks, man. I appreciate that, Andrew. Right, you have a podium. You have the right voice for the people. Andrew, listen, man. I'm going to tell you, you've been a supporter for the last 4 or 5 years through PhillyInfluence.com. I know you're a Heat Ratio supporter, Fox Sports. Again, you do it all, man. I appreciate people like you. I said this before, that are consistently commenting and allow me to be able to interact, whether it be life, sports, whatever it is. It keeps me energetic. It keeps me moving forward, and I appreciate that, Andrew. And again, Matt, thanks so much. Matt, tell everybody where to find you. This will be on replay anyway, so I'm going to pod this up because I think this was a great conversation. Tell everybody where they can find you and what's new on the agenda for yourself.
Yeah, Tony, like you, man, we are grinding it out. Continue to bring the content over at fantasyteamadvice.com. We're talking all kind of sports, not only basketball, also football on the horizon, baseball. If you're a fan of PGA, mixed martial arts, whatever your flavor of sports, man, fantasyteamadvice.com is the website. The podcast is Fantasy Team Advice Podcast, and we're in the middle of our Podpalooza, man. I just got off today, and I kid you not, just today alone, had a podcast with Dr. Roto from Sports Illustrated, Paulie Sleepers of the Undroppables. If you're not familiar with Paulie, great work. Matt Akata over there at the Red Shirts podcast do great work. Bob Lung at Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Jim Wexel, who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers for, I believe he said 25 years. So, man, we're
Wow.
doing Podpalooza. We're bringing as many guests to the table as we can for the very same reason you said earlier. I think a lot of people out there are working really hard, deserve notoriety, deserve to build their brand and have people follow them. And if we can partner with that and provide people any additional assistance, that's what we're here for, man. So, and we're here for you, brother. Again, I could feel that you had some things on your chest tonight, and you wanted to get off your chest. And again, I think people need to hear. I think people need to have a place to put their voice and to be heard. And again, I think you provided that outlet. So again, very thankful for you and what you guys are doing.
Thanks, man. And I appreciate it. And Matt, thanks for joining me. And as always, everybody who listened, I appreciate it. Again, catch me every day, probably around 9 a.m. I do a little thing called Jigsaw's Judgment. Take a topic of the day. We'll see what tomorrow brings. At Sports Guy Mike Show, 10:30 every day from 10:30 to 11. The Heat Ratio podcast, obviously, Fantasy Firebox podcast, the Fantasy Fix every single day. Fox Sports The Gambler at 3:50 ish. Today did a little talk on Jamal Murray. And again, Andrew, you're the best too, my brother. God bless you as well. And God bless everybody out there. Like I always like to say, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you next time. Matt, Andrew, everybody listening, you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.